The space between Mars and Jupiter was usually quiet, empty except for the occasional asteroid or automated mining vessel. But today, something else floated in that vast darkness. A lone warship, its hull bearing the scars of countless battles. The U.S. Dauntless wasn't supposed to be alone out here. Just 2 weeks ago, it had been part of Earth's proud defense fleet of 30 ships. Now, it was all that remained. Captain James Miller stood at his usual spot on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the stars through the main viewport. He was tall and strong, though the recent battles had left dark circles under his eyes. His black uniform was clean and pressed. He believed in keeping up appearances, especially in hard times. The crew needed to see their captain at his best. The bridge was quieter than usual. Everyone felt the weight of their situation. They were the last ship, the final line of defense between Earth and the alien fleet that had destroyed their companions. The Centauri Collective, as they called themselves, had appeared 3 months ago with demands for Earth to surrender. When Earth refused, they attacked. Another status report, Lieutenant Thompson, Miller ordered, his voice steady and calm. Emma Thompson looked up from her sensor station, her fingers moving quickly over the glowing display. She was young but skilled, one of the best sensor operators in the fleet. All systems are running at 90%, sir. We've almost finished repairs from the last battle. Miller nodded. The Dauntless had taken heavy damage in the fight that had cost them their last sister ship, the Valiant. The memory of watching the Valiant explode still haunted him. Captain Anderson had been a good friend. Engineering reports the new power couplings are holding steady, called out Chief Engineer Robert Walsh from his station. Walsh was an older man with gray hair and hands that showed years of working with machines. But I still don't trust them. They're not as good as the originals. They'll have to do, Chief, Miller replied. They all knew they were working with whatever they could salvage or repair. Supply lines back to Earth were stretched thin, and most of their repair stations had been destroyed. The bridge crew worked in focused silence, each person monitoring their stations. Besides Miller, Thompson, and Walsh, there was Communications Officer David Turner, a quiet man who could decode enemy transmissions faster than any computer, and Weapons Officer Maria Rodriguez, whose quick thinking had saved them more than once in recent battles. The quiet was broken by a sudden beep from Thompson's station. She sat up straighter, her hands flying over the controls. Captain, multiple hyperspace signatures detected. Her voice carried a mix of fear and determination. They're big, sir, really big. Miller moved to her station, looking at the readings himself. His expression remained calm, but inside, his heart was racing. The signatures were massive, bigger than anything they'd seen before. How many? Thompson's voice was barely a whisper. Initial count shows 237 ships, sir, and those are just the ones big enough to register at this distance. The bridge fell silent. 237 ships, against one. Show me, Miller ordered, and Thompson transferred the data to the main view screen. The tactical display lit up with red dots, each one representing an enemy vessel. They were arranged in the Centauri's favorite attack formation, a massive sphere that could close in from all directions. Miller returned to his command chair, his mind racing through options. They could try to run, but the Centauri ships were faster. They could call for help, but there was no help left to call. Earth's remaining defenses were needed to protect the planet itself. Sir, Turner called from his station. We're receiving a transmission from the lead Centauri vessel. Put it through. The view screen changed to show a Centauri commander. Like all their species, it had gray-blue skin and large, dark eyes. When it spoke, its words were translated by the ship's computer into English. Human vessel. The alien's voice was cold and mechanical through the translator. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Your species has fought well, but this is the end. Surrender your ship, and we will spare your crew. Continue to resist, and we will destroy you. Miller looked around at his crew. He saw fear in their eyes. Yes, But he also saw determination. They all knew what was at stake. If the Dauntless fell, there would be nothing between this fleet and Earth except the planet's own defenses, which wouldn't be enough against a force this size. What the Centauri commander didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the Dauntless wasn't just another warship. In the months leading up to the war, Earth scientists had developed something new, something dangerous, something that had been installed on the Dauntless as a last resort. They called it the Phoenix system. It was a revolutionary weapons platform that could absorb enemy fire and redirect it back at the attackers. The system had been deemed too unstable for mass production. The first test ship had exploded during trials. But desperate times had called for desperate measures, and the Dauntless had been chosen to carry the only working prototype. They hadn't used it yet. The power requirements were enormous, and the risks were high. But now, facing an enemy fleet that outnumbered them more than 200 to 1, Miller knew it was time. He pressed a button on his chair, opening a channel to all decks. All hands, this is the captain speaking. You all can see what we're facing. The Centauri have brought their biggest fleet yet, and they think they have us cornered. They think we'll surrender. He paused, letting his words sink in. But they don't know who they're dealing with. They don't know what this ship can do. And most importantly, they don't know the courage of this crew. Miller stood up, his voice growing stronger. We are the last line of defense between these aliens and our home. Behind us lies Earth, our families, everything we've ever known and loved. I won't lie to you. What we're about to do is dangerous. But I believe in this ship. I believe in this crew. And I believe that today, we're going to show the Centauri why they should have never attacked Earth in the first place. The crew straightened in their seats, inspired by their captain's words. Miller turned to Walsh. Chief, begin power-up sequence for the Phoenix system. Walsh nodded, his fingers already moving over his console. Aye, Captain. Diverting power now. Miller turned back to Turner. Send our response to the Centauri commander. Ready. Sir. Miller smiled, a hard, determined expression that would have made any enemy worry. Tell them. Come and get us. The message was sent, and for a moment, everything was quiet. Then the space around the Dauntless lit up as hundreds of Centauri ships opened fire, their energy weapons turning the darkness of space into a blazing inferno of destruction. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and the crew of the Dauntless was ready to make history. The first shots from the Centauri fleet lit up space like 1,000 suns. Energy beams of red and purple streaked through the darkness, all aimed at the lone human ship. The crew of the Dauntless braced themselves, many closing their eyes, expecting these moments to be their last. But Captain Miller kept his eyes open, watching as the enemy fire approached. Deep within the ship, the experimental Phoenix system began to hum. The sound started low, barely noticeable, then grew until it vibrated through every deck. The hull of the Dauntless, scared and battered from previous battles, began to glow with a soft blue light. Phoenix system powering up, Chief Engineer Walsh reported from his station, his voice tense. Power levels rising, 30%, 50%. His eyes widened as he watched the readings. Sir, we're getting energy readings I've never seen before. The enemy fire struck the Dauntless, but instead of tearing through the hull, something amazing happened. The blue glow intensified, and the energy beams seemed to sink into the ship's armor. Where they hit, the blue light pulsed and swirled like living things. Lieutenant Thompson stared at her sensor readings in disbelief. Captain, the ship it's absorbing the enemy fire, all of it. Miller nodded, though even he was surprised by how well the system was working. During the secret testing phase, they had only managed to absorb the power of 2 or 3 ships at once. Now they were taking fire from hundreds, and the Phoenix system was handling it. The hull temperature began to rise. Deck plates grew warm under the crew's feet, and the air became humid as the environmental systems struggled to handle the heat. Warning lights flashed across every console, but the ship held together. Engineering report, Miller called out, steadying himself as the ship shuddered under another wave of enemy fire. Walsh's fingers danced across his controls, making constant adjustments. The Phoenix system is performing beyond all expectations, sir. It's like... He paused, searching for the right words. It's like the system is learning, adapting to the enemy weapons. Power absorption is at 150% of maximum rated capacity and still climbing. On the main view screen, they could see the Centauri fleet had stopped firing. The alien ships hung in space, seemingly confused by what they were witnessing. No one had ever survived such a massive attack before, let alone absorbed it. Communications Officer Turner's console lit up. Sir, we're getting multiple transmissions from the enemy fleet. They're talking to each other, trying to figure out what's happening. They sound scared. Miller allowed himself a small smile. Fear was good. Fear meant the aliens were starting to understand that they had made a terrible mistake. The Dauntless now glowed like a blue star, its hull crackling with absorbed energy. The power readings were off the scale, far beyond anything the scientists who designed the system had thought possible. Warning alarms blared throughout the ship as systems struggled to contain the massive amount of energy. Hull temperature critical, Thompson reported, her voice rising. If we take much more, we'll start to melt. Miller knew it was time. They couldn't absorb any more energy, but they could use what they had gathered. Weapons Officer Rodriguez, is the targeting system integrated with the Phoenix? Rodriguez nodded, her hands already moving over her controls. Yes, sir. The system is giving me firing solutions for every ship in the enemy fleet. We can hit them all at once if we want to. That was another surprise. The Phoenix system was supposed to only be able to target a few ships at a time. But somehow, like Walsh had said, it seemed to be adapting, growing stronger, becoming more than its designers had intended. Sir, Walsh called out, his voice urgent. The power levels are becoming unstable. We need to release the energy soon, or the system might overload. Miller stood from his chair, his decision made. Target their command ships first, then work your way out to the smaller vessels. Fire when ready. Rodriguez took a deep breath, then pressed the firing control. The Dauntless shuddered, and for a moment, everything went quiet. Then the ship released its stored energy in a massive burst of blue-white fire. The blast split into hundreds of smaller beams, each one carrying the power of multiple nuclear weapons. The Centauri ships tried to evade, but the targeting was perfect. The first beam struck their lead ship, cutting through its shields like they weren't even there. The massive vessel exploded in a ball of plasma that lit up space brighter than any sun. More beams followed, each finding its target. Centauri ships exploded one after another, their own weapons fire turned against them with devastating effect. The aliens tried to return fire, but the Phoenix system absorbed their shots, adding even more power to its next blast. Enemy fleet is in chaos, Thompson reported excitedly. They're breaking formation, trying to retreat. The bridge crew watched in amazement as the mighty Centauri armada fell apart. Ships collided with each other in their panic to escape, while others disappeared into hyperspace, fleeing the battle entirely. In less than 5 minutes, the battle had turned completely around. Through it all, Miller stood calmly on his bridge, directing his crew with the same steady authority he always showed. Keep firing, Rodriguez. Don't let up until they're gone or destroyed. The Dauntless continued its attack, its blue fire cutting through space, destroying or driving away every Centauri ship in range. The aliens had come expecting an easy victory over a single human vessel. Instead, they found themselves facing something they had never seen before, a ship that could turn their own power against them. Finally, after what seemed like hours but was really only minutes, the space around the Dauntless was clear except for floating debris and the retreating engines of the few Centauri ships that had managed to escape. Enemy fleet is in full retreat, sir, Thompson reported, her voice filled with pride. Only 23 ships managed to escape. The rest are either destroyed or disabled. Miller nodded, then turned to Walsh. Status of the Phoenix system. The chief engineer shook his head in wonder. It's already cooling down, sir. The system handled everything perfectly. It's like... He paused, checking his readings again. It's like it was designed for exactly this kind of battle. Miller looked around at his crew, seeing the same mix of amazement and pride on all their faces. They had just accomplished something impossible. One ship had stood against an armada and won. Send a message to Earth Command, he ordered Turner. Tell them the Phoenix has risen, and the enemy has learned to fear its fire. As the Dauntless hung in space, its hull slowly cooling from its incredible display of power, the crew knew they had just changed the course of the war. The Centauri would think twice before attacking Earth again, and the legend of the ship that could not be destroyed was about to spread throughout the galaxy. The victory over the Centauri fleet had come at a cost. The Dauntless drifted in space, its hull still cooling from the massive energy discharge. Warning lights flashed across every control panel as the crew worked to stabilize their damaged systems. They had won the battle, but the ship needed repairs. Captain Miller watched from his command chair as damage reports came in from all decks. The experimental Phoenix system had worked better than anyone had expected, but it had pushed the ship to its limits. Some of the hull plates had partially melted, and several power conduits had burned out completely. Engineering, what's our status? Miller called out, his voice showing no sign of the exhaustion he felt after the intense battle. Chief Engineer Walsh looked up from his station, his face streaked with grease from where he'd been working on repairs. The good news is the Phoenix system is still intact, sir. The bad news is we've burned out most of our power relays. We're running on backup systems right now. Before Miller could respond, Lieutenant Thompson's sensor station started beeping urgently. Her hands flew over the controls as she checked the readings. Captain, more hyperspace signatures detected. Her voice carried a note of panic. They're coming from a different direction this time. The crew froze. They had just fought off one Centauri fleet, and their ship was in no condition for another battle. Miller moved quickly to Thompson's station. How many? At least 300 ships, sir. Bigger than the last fleet. Thompson's voice shook slightly. They'll be here in less than 10 minutes. Miller's mind raced. The Phoenix system had worked once, but could it work again in the ship's damaged state? He turned to Walsh. Chief, can we get the Phoenix operational in time? Walsh shook his head. The system itself is working, but we don't have enough power. Most of our energy cells were drained in the last battle. We need at least 30 minutes to recharge to fighting capacity. They didn't have 30 minutes. Miller looked at his crew, seeing the fear in their eyes. They had accomplished the impossible once today, but now they were being asked to do it again. Options? Miller asked, looking around the bridge. I'll take any ideas right now. Weapons Officer Rodriguez spoke up from her station. Sir, we still have some energy stored in the Phoenix system from the last battle. Not much, but maybe we could use it differently this time. Miller raised an eyebrow. Explain. Rodriguez's fingers moved over her console, bringing up a tactical display. The system absorbs so much energy that even our leftovers are significant. Instead of trying to fight the whole fleet, we could use what we have to create a massive energy pulse. Something big enough to disrupt their hyperspace approach. It was a dangerous idea. Disrupting hyperspace could have unpredictable effects. Ships could be thrown off course, destroyed, or even lost in spacetime. But they were out of options. Walsh, is it possible? Miller asked. The chief engineer did some quick calculations on his console. Maybe. We'd have to modify the Phoenix system to release all its energy at once, in every direction. It's never been tested that way. Could tear the ship apart. Miller nodded grimly. Better than letting Earth fall to the Centauri. He pressed a button on his chair, opening a channel to all decks. All hands, this is the captain. In about 8 minutes, we're going to try something that's either brilliant or suicidal. Secure all stations and brace for possible structural failure." The crew moved quickly, securing loose equipment and strapping themselves into their seats. In engineering, Walsh and his team worked frantically to modify the Phoenix system for its new task. Every second counted. "Enemy fleet approaching," Thompson called out. 7 minutes to hyperspace exit. Miller watched the tactical display as hundreds of red dots moved closer to their position. The Centauri had learned from their last defeat and were bringing an even bigger force. But size wouldn't matter if Rodriguez's plan worked. 6 minutes. In engineering, sparks flew as Walsh's team made the final connections. The Phoenix system hummed differently now, a higher pitch that made everyone's teeth ache. 5 minutes. Rodriguez worked at her weapons station, programming the energy pulse. They would only get one shot at this. If it failed, there would be no time for a second attempt. 4 minutes. The hull of the Dauntless began to glow again, but this time the blue light was different. It pulsed in waves, moving from the bow to the stern and back again, like a heartbeat. 3 minutes. Warning alarms blared as the ship's computers detected the growing energy buildup. The Phoenix system was never designed to release its power all at once like this. The ship groaned as its structure was stressed in new ways. 2 minutes. Miller gripped the arms of his command chair. "Status of the pulse. Energy levels at maximum safe limits," Walsh reported, "which were about to exceed by a lot." 1 minute. The bridge crew could see the hyperspace distortions now, massive tears in space, where the Centauri fleet would emerge. 300 ships, all appearing at once, ready to destroy the damaged human vessel. 30 seconds. The hull temperature was rising again. Warning lights flashed red across every console as the ship's systems protested the enormous energy buildup. 15 seconds. Miller took a deep breath. "On my mark, Rodriguez." 10 seconds. The hyperspace tiers grew larger. They could see the shapes of Centauri ships beginning to emerge. 5 seconds. "All hands, brace for impact," Miller shouted. "Fire the pulse." Rodriguez pressed the firing control. For a split second, nothing happened. Then the Dauntless unleashed all its stored energy in a single massive burst. The pulse expanded outward in a perfect sphere of blue-white fire, moving faster than any normal weapon. The pulse hit the hyperspace tiers just as the Centauri ships were emerging. The effect was immediate and devastating. The tiers distorted, twisted, and collapsed. Centauri ships were caught half in and half out of hyperspace, their hulls twisting in impossible ways as space itself warped around them. The bridge crew watched in awe as the mighty alien fleet was torn apart not by weapons, but by the very fabric of space-time. Ships vanished, were crushed, or exploded as their hyperspace drives overloaded. Those that managed to fully emerge from hyperspace were thrown off course, colliding with each other in a cascade of destruction. The Dauntless shuddered violently as the pulse's aftereffects washed over it. Systems failed across the ship, and for a moment, it seemed like they had pushed their luck too far. But the tough little ship held together, proving once again why it had been chosen for the Phoenix system. When the chaos finally ended, the space around them was empty except for debris. The entire Centauri fleet had been destroyed or scattered across several light-years of space. Miller looked around at his stunned crew. "Damage report." Walsh checked his readings. "The Phoenix system is completely drained, sir. We'll need major repairs before we can use it again. But we're alive." Miller nodded. They had survived again, and in doing so, had discovered yet another way to use their incredible weapon. The Centauri would think twice before sending another fleet through hyperspace to attack Earth. "Send word to Earth Command," Miller ordered. Tell them the Phoenix doesn't just rise from the ashes. Sometimes it creates them." 2 days had passed since the Dauntless had scattered the second Centauri fleet. The ship hung in space near the asteroid belt, its crew working around the clock to repair the damage from their last desperate battle. The hull still showed signs of stress from the massive energy pulse they had released, and many systems were running on backup power. Captain Miller stood in engineering, watching as Chief Engineer Walsh directed repairs. The Phoenix system lay partially disassembled around them, its components spread across several workstations, as the engineering team tried to understand what had happened during the battle. "It's amazing, sir," Walsh said, holding up a piece of the system's core. "The technology didn't just work as designed. It evolved. These crystals have changed their structure. They've adapted to handle more power than we thought possible." Miller examined the crystal. It glowed faintly blue, pulsing in time with the ship's power system. "Can we use it again?" Walsh nodded slowly. "Yes, but it's different now. The system has learned, for lack of a better word. It's not the same weapon we started with." Before Miller could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. "Captain, to the bridge, emergency." Lieutenant Thompson's voice was urgent. Miller ran to the bridge, his heart racing. Had the Centauri returned? But when he arrived, he found his crew staring at the main view screen with expressions of wonder rather than fear. The screen showed a massive fleet approaching their position. But these weren't Centauri ships. The designs were completely different, sleeker, more organic looking, with hulls that seemed to flow like liquid metal. "Unknown fleet approaching," Thompson reported. "Over 500 ships, but they're not Centauri. They're not matching any known designs in our database." Communications Officer Turner's console lit up with activity. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the lead ship. It's being broadcast on all frequencies, in multiple languages." "Put it through," Miller ordered, settling into his command chair. The view screen changed to show an alien bridge, but not like any they had seen before. The new aliens were tall and elegant, with silvery skin and eyes that seemed to shimmer with different colors. When their leader spoke, their words were translated smoothly into English. "Defenders of Earth, we have witnessed your battles. We have seen how one ship stood against many, how you turned the enemy's strength against them. We are the Aldari Alliance, and we have come to offer our help." Miller exchanged glances with his crew. They had heard rumors of the Aldari, an ancient race that rarely involved themselves in the conflicts of younger species. Some said they were the first race to achieve faster-than-light travel, that their technology was centuries ahead of everyone else's. "Why would you help us?" Miller asked carefully. In his experience, offers that seemed too good to be true usually were. The Aldari leader's expression showed something like approval. "A wise question. We help because we have watched your species for a long time. We watched as you developed your technology, as you reached for the stars. The Centauri attacked you because they feared what you might become. They were right to fear, but wrong to attack." The leader gestured, and the view screen split to show technical diagrams. "Your Phoenix system. It is crude by our standards, but it shows remarkable potential. You took the basic principles of energy absorption and created something new, something that could evolve and adapt. This is the mark of a species that deserves to survive." Miller studied the diagrams. They showed modifications to the Phoenix system, improvements that would make it more stable, more powerful. "You're offering to help us improve our weapons." "We offer more than that," the Aldari leader replied. "We offer an alliance. The Centauri have dominated this sector of space for too long, crushing younger races before they can reach their potential. We believe it is time for that to change." As if to emphasize the point, long-range sensors detected new contacts. Thompson's hands flew over her controls. "Captain, multiple Centauri fleets detected, approaching from different directions. They've gathered every ship they have for one final attack." The Aldari leader didn't seem concerned. "They'd bring nearly 2,000 ships. They hope to overwhelm you with numbers, to destroy the Phoenix system before other races can copy it. Will you accept our help?" Miller looked at his crew. They had fought impossible odds before and won, but this was different. Even with the Phoenix system, they couldn't fight 2,000 ships alone. He made his decision. "We accept your alliance," he said firmly. The Aldari leader nodded, and suddenly the Dauntless's systems came alive with new energy. The Phoenix system hummed with power as Aldari technology merged with it, improving and stabilizing its functions. "Chief," Miller called to engineering, "what's happening down there?" Walsh's voice was filled with excitement. "Sir, the Aldari modifications are incredible. The Phoenix system is now operating at 500% efficiency. Power curve is stable, all systems nominal. We're ready to fight." The Centauri fleets emerged from hyperspace, their ships filling space around them. But this time, they faced not just one human ship, but the combined forces of humanity and the Aldari Alliance. "Enemy ships opening fire," Thompson reported. Miller smiled. "This time, they were ready. Return fire with everything we have. Show them why they should have left Earth alone." The Dauntless's hull began to glow, but now the blue light was shot through with silver streaks, Aldari technology working in harmony with human innovation. As the Centauri weapons fire approached, the Phoenix system absorbed it more efficiently than ever before. The battle that followed would be remembered for centuries. The Dauntless, powered by its improved Phoenix system, became a focal point of the fight. It absorbed enemy fire and redirected it with pinpoint accuracy, while the Aldari fleet moved with impossible grace, their advanced weapons cutting through Centauri defenses like they weren't even there. "Enemy fleet breaking formation," Thompson called out excitedly. "They're retreating." Miller watched as the mighty Centauri armada fell into chaos. Ships fled in every direction, their carefully planned attack dissolving into a panicked rout. The few ships that stood their ground were quickly destroyed by the combined fire of human and Aldari weapons. When it was over, the Dauntless had proven itself once again. But more importantly, humanity had gained powerful allies. The Aldari leaders' final words to them summed up what they had accomplished. "Today marks a new chapter in the history of this galaxy. The Centauri's reign of terror is ended, and a new alliance is born. Remember this day, humans of Earth, for it is not just a victory in battle, but a step toward a greater future for all species." Miller looked at his crew, seeing pride and hope in their faces. They had started this fight alone, one ship against an empire. They would finish it as part of something bigger, something that would change the galaxy forever. The Phoenix system hummed contentedly, its power now stabilized by Aldari technology. It had evolved beyond its original design, just as humanity had evolved beyond its original role in the galaxy. The future was uncertain, but for the first time since the war began, it looked bright. 1 month had passed since the great battle that changed the galaxy. The U.S. Dauntless glided smoothly through space, its hull now a perfect blend of human and Aldari technology. The scars from its previous battles had been repaired, but Captain Miller had insisted on keeping one small scratch near the bridge window, a reminder of how close they had come to defeat and how far they had traveled since then. The ship was different now. The Phoenix system had been completely rebuilt with Aldari help, transforming it from an experimental weapon into something that had never existed before. The blue glow that had once shone only during battle now pulsed constantly through special channels in the hull, a visible sign of the power that flowed through the ship. Miller stood on his bridge, watching Earth grow larger in the main view screen. They were returning home after a long mission, escorting Aldari ships to former Centauri worlds, helping to free planets that had been under alien control for generations. It felt good to be the liberators instead of the defenders. Message from Earth Command. "Sir," Turner called from his communication station. "They're organizing a ceremony. Apparently, every news network in the solar system wants to interview the crew that changed the course of the war." Miller smiled slightly. "Tell them we'll be there, but the Dauntless needs to make one stop first." The crew knew where they were going. It had become a tradition over the past month. Before each return to Earth, they visited the place where it all began, the space between Mars and Jupiter, where they had first stood alone against the Centauri fleet. Approaching coordinates, Lieutenant Thompson reported from her sensor station. The space around them was clear now, but floating debris still marked the site of that first incredible battle. Memorial Beacon is active and transmitting. The beacon had been placed there by Earth Command, marking the spot where one ship had dared to stand against an armada. Its message was simple. Here, humanity learned it was stronger than it knew. As they passed the beacon, Chief Engineer Walsh's voice came over the intercom from engineering. "Captain, you might want to see this. The Phoenix system is doing something new again." Miller made his way to engineering, where he found Walsh and his team gathered around the system's core. The crystals that powered the Phoenix system were glowing brighter than usual, and their pattern had changed. "It's like it recognizes where we are," Walsh explained, showing Miller the readings. "The system has evolved so much that sometimes I think it's almost alive. The Aldari say they've never seen anything like it." That was high praise from a race that had mastered energy manipulation centuries ago. The Aldari scientists, who had helped improve the Phoenix system, had been amazed by how it had adapted and grown. They said it showed them that humanity had untapped potential they hadn't suspected. Miller's comm unit beeped. "Captain." Thompson's voice was excited. "Multiple ships approaching. It's the Aldari diplomatic fleet. And, sir, you're not going to believe who's with them." When Miller returned to the bridge, he found his crew staring at the view screen in amazement. Alongside the silver ships of their Aldari allies were vessels of dozens of different designs. Some were organic-looking, others geometric, and a few seemed to bend the light around them in impossible ways. "We're receiving a transmission from the Aldari flagship," Turner reported. They say this is the first meeting of the new Galactic Council, and they want the Dauntless to lead them to Earth." Miller sat in his command chair, taking in the historic moment. The Aldari had told them this might happen. The defeat of the Centauri had created a power vacuum in the galaxy, and younger races that had been dominated by them were now free to choose their own path. Many had asked to join the alliance that Earth and the Aldari had formed. "Sir," Walsh called from engineering, "the Phoenix system is reacting to the alien ships. It's trying to communicate with them." The blue glow in the ship's hull brightened, sending out pulses of energy that the alien vessels seemed to respond to. Each ship began to glow with its own unique energy signature, creating a spectacular light show in space. "The Aldari say this is perfect," Turner translated from the incoming messages. "They say it shows that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology, but our ability to bring different species together." Miller thought about how far they had come. Just a month ago, they had been alone, fighting desperately to protect Earth. Now they were at the center of a new alliance that would reshape the galaxy. "Message from the Aldari flagship," Turner announced. "Their leader wants to speak to the crew." The familiar face of the Aldari leader appeared on the screen, their color-shifting eyes showing what seemed to be pride. "Crew of the Dauntless, you stand at a turning point in history. The ships you see around you represent 20 different species, all of whom have chosen to join our alliance. They came not because of our power or technology, but because of the example you set." The leader continued, "One ship, against impossible odds, showed the galaxy that determination and courage could overcome any obstacle. You proved that a younger race could stand up to an empire and win. But more importantly, you showed wisdom in victory, choosing to help free others rather than seek revenge or power for yourselves." Miller looked around at his crew, seeing the pride in their faces. They had earned this moment, every one of them. "The Phoenix system was just the beginning," the Aldari leader said. "Already, our combined scientists are discovering new possibilities by studying how it evolved. But the real Phoenix that rose from the ashes of war was not a weapon system. It was hope. Hope for a galaxy where different species could work together, could learn from each other, could build something greater than any one race could achieve alone." As if to emphasize the point, the Dauntless's Phoenix system pulsed again, and the alien ships responded with their own energy signatures. The patterns merged and danced in space, creating something new and beautiful. "Take us home," Miller ordered, his voice firm and proud. "Let's show Earth what their one ship helped create." The Dauntless moved forward, its improved engines humming smoothly. Behind it, the fleet of alien ships fell into formation, following the lead of the small human vessel that had changed everything. As they passed the memorial beacon, its message seemed more true than ever. Earth grew larger in their view screen, and Miller could see other ships rising from the planet to meet them, more human vessels, now equipped with their own versions of the Phoenix system. The technology had been shared with Earth's fleet, each ship's system evolving in its own unique way. "Send a message to Earth Command," Miller said to Turner. Tell them the Dauntless is coming home, and we're bringing the future with us." The ship's Phoenix system pulsed one final time, as if agreeing with its captain's words. They had started this journey as one ship trying to defend its home. They were ending it as part of something much bigger, a legend that would be remembered as long as ships sailed between the stars.